Hey guys, welcome back. So in this video we're gonna discuss about the JDBC. So JDBC is the Java database connectivity. So why do we need such a thing like a database connectivity? So let's see how do we why do we need that actually. So let's start off with this problem that let's assume that you have a web service. So it's nothing but an application that is hosted on the web, and you have your database. So let's assume we have our own database system like a MySQL, which is on your laptop, and we have our a web service running on some sort of application server. So as we can see that the entire application processing, all the business logic, everything will be here in this web service, and whatever the data that is needed is going to be residing on this database. Then if both of these two softwares are running on two different systems, so how can I access how can I make a application call between these two? Is there an API between them, or is there a special mechanism through which I can call some sort of uh, resources, and is there a way that we can actually establish a sort of connection between these two? So if this is the problem, then we have our solution within the Java itself. So it is nothing but the Java database connectivity. So even before discussing about the Java database connectivity, so in the early 90s, all these programmers, so they had this same problem. So, so they actually came up with something in between these two systems, and they called it something as a ODBC. So what is ODBC, and what what is its significance? So usually, this is our use case, right? So we have an application, and we have some sort of a databases. So if we have a single application and a single database like this, so we just needed a single driver, or we needed a single program which is going to act as an intermediate communication link between these two things. So if this is the way, then we need, so we call these programs in between, so which act as the intermediate nodes, we call them as the drivers. So 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 these drivers, so they are provided by the database, so they are used to interact with the database, and it works in two ways as well. So using a driver, we'll be able to, so we are able to establish some sort of connection between these two things, right? So we sort of solved a problem, but another problem has arisen. So what if we have a multiple uh, database instances? So in this case we only have a single database, but in this example we can see that I have three databases, and so all of them are not supposed to be of the same type. It can be of so they might be working on a different system, so they might be working with a different architecture, so they are quite different. So how can I access this driver? So we still have all these drivers which we called as the intermediate programs, but there is no way that I can, so my application has to interact with each and every driver to actually manage some sort of data. So it became a big headache, because we don't want our application to have all these configurations of the drivers, and we have to manually configure all the drivers and attach the drivers. So it became a big issue. So in 1980s, Microsoft came up with something called as a ODBC. So ODBC is going to provide you a driver manager. So this driver manager, so they have defined a standard which is called as ODBC. So ODBC stands for Open Database Connectivity. So this ODBC software will be available with the application as well as the databases. So since the ODBC is enabled on the endpoints, so we just needed a driver manager, which is like a load balancer, or it's just a mapper. So it is going to check which database that you're trying to act, and it is going to establish a connection between you and that driver, and the driver will take the further processing ahead. So this is how ODBC sort of solved this issue. But ODBC was written in C and C++, which was very predominantly used in those days. So for each application, for any sort of application, ODBC can be used. But for Java, we wanted to have some sort of a mechanism which has the Java enabledness, and we can use the Java. So we can use all this management in the Java code itself. So we came up with something called as a JDBC. So we still use this ODBC driver. So we'll see, what are these Java drivers and how are they different. So we're gonna see them. So in the same way as the ODBC driver is going to act as the intermediate layer, which is going to make the mapping of the drivers. So we similarly have this JDBC driver, which further is going to interact with the ODBC drivers of that databases. So let's see what are these drivers and what exactly the JDBC is providing us. So let's assume we have an application. It can be a Java servlet or an applet. So, and we have three different databases, and they have their own JDBC drivers. So now using the JDBC API, we are going to write some sort of code, which is embedded within the servlet or the applet or whatever the program that we're writing. So all this code will be embedded, and using that code, so we are going to call something called as a driver manager. So this is the main class of this entire JDBC. So we'll see the syntaxes of actually how to load this driver manager class. So this driver manager class is going to find the right drivers, and it's going to load them into the memory. It is going to form a connection. It is going to establish the link, and then we can sort of execute all the queries, and then finally we need to close the connection. So we've seen that we have all these drivers. So what are these drivers, and why are there many drivers in Java? Why not use a single driver? Because the a driver manager is already doing all the mapping for that thing. So let's see why do we needed those drivers. So let's see the first driver. So this is the most fundamental one, which is used in Java in the early versions of Java. So we have the JD. So this is our Java application. So this is the JDBC API. So using the JDBC API, we're going to write some code into our Java application, and then our application, we are going to have this driver called as JDBC ODBC bridge driver. So as we discussed that the vendor's database is supposed to have this ODBC driver. So it will have its ODBC driver. And if our Java application is not having the ODBC driver, so we can create this Java ODBC bridge driver, and using the bridge, we will be able to convert all of our Java code into this ODBC code. So ODBC is nothing but it has some APIs. We just need to call them for some operation to be done. So all this Java method calls will be converted into ODBC API calls. So this is not used in industry nowadays because it's so obsolete, and we don't need ODBC a specific drivers since nowadays Windows and all other OS are actually embedding this ODBC. So let's go to the second driver. So this is the native API driver. So as okay, let's say the ODBC is not enabled on the system. Even though the ODBC is not enabled, we still have the native API calls of that of this our database system, right? So we can access all those APIs which are provided by the native database software. So we can use this a native API driver, which is going to create a driver which is going to act as an intermediary between the vendor's APIs and our Java JDBC API. So let's see the third one. So this is a network protocol driver. So this is a bit different. So it is used in the networking area. So so usually what happens is, as we have discussed, so the application resides in a one server, and the database resides in another server, and there is another server called as a middleware server. A middleware server is going to work closely with the database. So now we are only concerned about invoking the middleware, not the actual the database. So in the previous example, so we are still supposed to invoke whatever the APIs are within the database control. But here we are not supposed to the database, so we're only going to call the middleware, which is which will further refer the database. So for referring to the middleware, we needed a special driver which is called as the network protocol driver. So it is nothing but it is a driver that has the ability to talk with the middleware. So the middleware can be of any configuration, and it will be internally managed by the JDBC API, which is going to provide us with that driver class. And then let's come back to the most important one, because the type 4 driver is what are used in the industry, and in 90% of the Java code, you are going to use this a force driver, which is called as the thin driver. It is actually called as the thin driver because, see, it's actually reducing the the uh, a complexity between the connection. So you're not creating a lot of connections. So you're just using a driver. So that driver is going to act as the sole intermediate between your application and the database. So we don't need any network protocol driver which is going to further communicate with a middleware, and it will further do some processing. No, and we're not even using the native APIs to actually interact with the APIs of the database, which in turn have to do a lot of processing. So the thin driver is the most advanced type of driver. So we use this in the industry a lot. And so this is so and the and you need to get the thin driver, which is defined by the database. So as you know that this a thin driver should be working closely with the database, and the JDBC API is going to call the thin driver. So this is how all these drivers of the JDBC work. So let's see what's the workflow of this. How do we define the connection and how do we open them? So let's get to the JDBC workflow. So this is the syntax of creating them. So here we have to create a connection. Okay, so why are we saying driver manager dot get connection even before the connection? So as we have discussed here, that the driver manager is the most important part of this JDBC. So we need this class into our system, but the driver manager class, we don't implicitly import that into our system. We don't create an instance of it, but we want an instance of it in our uh, a local machine. So we can achieve that using something called as reflection. So when we get to that, I'm going to explain how it happens. So let's see the workflow of it. So we're going to import the package, we're going to import the driver name. So we're going to get the driver name here, and then so first we have to open a connection. A connection is going to establish, so a connection has to be established. So a session will be created, so you can execute your queries within the session, and when the session is over, so that's your communication link is going to be over. And then after creating a connection, so if you want to execute something on the database, so how do we usually execute anything? If you want the DBMS software to do anything for you, you have to write queries, right? So a query is nothing but a statement. It could be a DML statement, a DQL statement. It's nothing but a statement at a very high level. So we have to define a statement. It could be insert, update, delete. It could be anything, but you have to create a statement. And then after executing the statement, if it is a select statement, we are going to get something called as a result set. A result set is nothing but the result that we actually see when we write the select query. So we get a temporary table like structure. So it is nothing but it is the result set that we use. So and after the results, and after processing the result set, so we're not supposed to do anything with the database. Then we have to close the connection implicitly, so then it will be available for the other sessions. And so there is another important thing that we need to see, that so here, as you can see, the a driver manager is actually the first step that you need to do. So you need to create this a driver manager, and you need to form a connection, and you have to create the statements and everything else. But this thing is not done as we expect, because how do we expect? We expect to create a new instance of the driver manager and then call the a get connection method, but instead of that, so we use something called as a reflection. So let me show you the syntax. So this is the syntax. So a class dot for name, and we're going to specify the name of the class. And by doing this, we are uh, dynamically invoking that a class, and we are bringing that into the memory. So by any which way, it will be in the memory so that we can access them. So that's how it works. And so let's see. Okay, let's now see the workflow as we see in the diagram. So we are first creating a connection of the driver manager, and using the driver manager class, we are calling this method called as get connection. And using this get connection, it is going to return you something called as a connection object. So it is connection is actually an interface. So we are just so it is just used to refer here in this case. And coming back, so we have something called as commit. So as we seen in the a transaction video, that we need to commit whatever the changes that we have made. So this is actually a feature of the connection object. So you can commit the statements that are executed as of now. So if you want them to be persisted into the database, then you can call this commit. And then we have the statement. So now we need to use this connection object and call the create statement method to sort of create a statement. So this will give us some sort of a statement object, and then we have to place our query into this object. So we'll see the syntax for that. And then you have to call that execute. And when you execute the statement, see, normally we have three syntaxes. We have the execute, we have execute update, and execute query. So if you're trying to select some sort of values from the database, then you would obviously get a result set in this case, right? So you need to manage it in a different way, so that we have a different syntax for it. So we use this for a method called execute query, and inside the method we are only supposed to pass the select statements only, and it is going to give you a result set. And using the result set dot next, so we can iterate over the result set. And if it is just any sort of a DML command, like if you're trying to insert, update, or delete from the database, then you call the execute update method. So execute update method is going to execute that DML query, as well as it is going to return you the number of rows affected by that. So the return type is going to be an integer. And then you have the statement of dot execute. So execute is normally used if you're trying to run a some block of statement. It could be any statement, but usually we use it for calling procedures and for creating tables. So for the DDL commands, so we use execute. But usually we want to deal with the execute query and execute update. So yeah. And if you were to look closely here, we got some interesting things. How do we define them? Okay, so we're going to import packages, we're going to load drivers, and then so we have to bring this a driver manager. So we have to bring this a driver manager class into our memory, right? So we are going to say a dot for name. So we're going to say a class dot for name, and we are going to provide the name of the driver. So our driver will be loaded in this way. And after the driver is loaded, I'm going to call one method of the driver, which is the get connection method, and it is going to provide me a connection object. So I have the connection interfaces reference is going to uh, handle it. And now, so okay, what's the third step? So we're going to create a statement. So a statement object is created, and the fourth step is you gotta execute the query. So you gotta give some sort of a select statement or whatever statement into this a statement object. And when you say execute query, it is going to give you a result set. So we will get this result set. So the result set, so we have all the data with us. We can process them. We can process it as we want it. And then after all the processing is done, so you got to close this result set. You got to close the statement. You got to close the connection as well. So this is how the workflow happens. And let's see the syntaxes for it. So the class dot phone name, and we have to provide the name of the driver. So different databases have the different drivers, and even for the same database, we might have a lot of variations in the drivers. So the class dot phone name is a reflection syntax, which is going to load the class dynamically into the memory. So now we have our a driver class into our memory, right? So now let's call it driver manager. So the a driver manager is the only class in this entire discussion. All these are interfaces. So using the a driver manager, I'm calling uh, a get connection method. So this get connection method, so there are actually a lot of overloaded syntaxes, but let's see one of the overloaded syntax. In the syntax, so you are providing the URL of your database, and then you are providing the username and password. So there are many variations. You can have a single string which is going to provide you with all the information, and there is another way where you can provide it as a property. So there are multiple ways, but this is only used to sort of make a connection and return the connection object. So now you have made a connection. Now, okay, let's see what the driver manager is going to do. So this is our application JDBC. So the driver manager is going to have all these JDBC drivers. It's going to have the driver for Oracle, MySQL, and SQL Server. So they have all these drivers. So here we're going to provide what sort of a database that you're using, and what's your where are you located, what's your host name. So everything is going to be there here. So using this information, it is going to find the right fit, and it is going to create a connection with the database, and it is going to return that connection to the it is going to return you that connection. So this is how the driver manager internally creates a connection and gives you. If you try to give any other, okay, let's say you are giving Oracle here. So it is going to create an object. So it is going to create a connection object with the Oracle, and it is going to return you that. And then, so since we have a connection, we need to create a statement. So I'm going to use the connection reference, and I'm going to call the create statement. So it is going to return me a statement object. Now I have a statement. Okay, so the statement itself is not sufficient, right? It's just an object. So now I have to put a query into that statement. So let's say this is my query. So my query is, I'm trying to insert into the students the ID and name, and I'm giving the values 101 and John Doe. So this is my query, and now I'm saying a statement. So this is the object that we got. I'm saying statement dot execute update. So since this is the DML query, we are going to use the execute update, and I gave the query here. So my query is here now. So now after executing this query, we are going to so it is going to return the number of rows that are affected by this query. So we're going to store that value for our further person now. So and we are printing the number of rows as affected. So in terms of an insert statement, it's going to return you one, right? Fine. Now, so as we have seen that this a statement object is going to execute whatever the statement that you want. But what are the types of statements that I can give? So there are three statements. So there is a simple statement, there is something called as a prepared statement, and there is something called as a callable statement. So a statement is just it is going to provide you the basic method. So it is going to provide you the execute query and execute update. But there is something called as a prepared statement. So let us say so you are trying to run the same set of statements, but with a minor modifications of the value. So let us say you're trying to update a value, so you're sort of joining a lot of tables, but you're only changing a single value each time. So let's say you have to do that a lot of times. So instead of doing that, you can create something called as a prepared statement, and provide the a varying value as a variable to that, right? So you can set the variable as many times as you want. So you have a prepared statement, which is a precompiled. Once it's compiled, it's going to use the a precompiled version. So that's why we say it's actually a faster than the statement. So since it's a prepared statement, So we can set the values and we can execute the query for different values. And then we have something called as the callable statement. A callable statement, so it is used to call the procedures and functions which are present in the database. So using the simple statement we may not be able to call them. So we had a special interface that is going to provide you the method to call a function. So that's about the uh, callable statement. So these are the different types of statements that you have in JDBC. And then at the end, as we know, we have to close the statement and we have to close the connection. If you're not closing the statement or the connection objects, so they will be let open. So if they are open, maybe some other process might not be able to access them because it was overloaded with connections. So it's always a great practice to close the connections which you have opened. So this is all about the JDBC. So we might see some sort of practical videos where I'm going to write the code, how to actually connect with the uh, our database, and how to load the drivers and where can we get the drivers. So we're going to see that in another video. So that's all for this video.